Revenge with Karen.
Effective immediately, Susan will no longer be with us, he said, like he was announcing the end of a buffet line. Just another Friday massacre in a department-wide Zoom call. I was mid-sip of lukewarm coffee when the audio hit. I didn't even look up. Didn't need to. I knew that voice, smug, nasal, with a sprinkle of Ivy League frat stink. The new CFO, Derek, fresh from torpedoing some startup in San Francisco and now somehow in charge of operational finances at Stratwell Systems. Slack died in real time. 1 second I was replying to a bug fix request, the next, my screen stuttered, then vanished. Session ended. Contact administrator. Like I was a damn temp who'd just stolen a stapler. My calendar entries were nuked. My access wiped, just like that. No warning, no call, no email. Just a slow digital erasure while my coworkers sat frozen on the call, blinking, fidgeting, pretending they didn't hear it. A few looked like they wanted to say something. No one did, I get it. Courage isn't exactly a currency in corporate America anymore. It's all about CYA and praying the layoff lottery skips your square on the bingo card. I left the meeting without a word, walked outside barefoot onto the patio, and let the Ohio wind slap me awake, till holding my coffee, still stunned stupid. I don't remember sitting down, but I remember the sound the plastic chair made, a long, miserable squeak, like even it was embarrassed for me. By the way, quick thing before we dive into what really happened next. If you've ever been blindsided by corporate BS or enjoy watching entitled execs get legally pantsed, hit that like button and maybe subscribe. I know 93% of you ghosts are just lurking, but it actually helps the team keep digging up these stories. All right, back to hell. So there I am, sitting in what's left of my dignity, and it hits me, not the firing, not the lack of humanity, not even the silence from my team. What hits me is how surgical it was. Derek didn't just fire me. He erased me like a stain, like I was a broken vending machine he could unplug. That man smirked while slicing the backbone out of the company's logistics arm like he was trimming fat. Joke's on him, he mistook the engine for an appendix. 18 months. That's how long I'd been quietly hardening the core architecture, rewriting the failover logic, rebuilding the pipeline routing system from duct tape spaghetti code to something a Fortune 100 company could actually rely on. It ran 24/7, handled hundreds of vendor relays per hour. It kept $95K an hour flowing through the system. And that system? I licensed it to Stratwell, not gifted it. And buried in my contract on page 12, line 38, was a phrase they'd all forgotten. Hell, even I forgot about it sometimes. But it mattered now. A few months after Derek joined, I'd noticed things. Innocuous at first. He stopped including me in planning calls, shifted budget authority away from my team, called my documentation dense, said we needed to get younger minds on back-end ops. Then came the whispers about cost efficiency realignment, but nothing concrete. I'd seen restructurings before, most of us had. Usually just meant squeezing interns for full-time work without full-time pay. But this was different. Derek had a plan, and I wasn't part of it. Still, that contract. When Stratwell hired me, I'd been poached from a major logistics firm. My recruiter had fought like a pit bull for every clause, every condition. Elevated protections, she called it. Sounded ridiculous at the time. Like overkill. One clause, in particular, I remember laughing at when she explained it. Section 9C. In the event of involuntary termination without protocol adherence, the officer of record retains temporary authority over suspension and continuity of licensed operational functions. No one ever thought it would be needed. But there it was. Ink on paper, nestled in legalese like a sleeping grenade. As I sat there, eyes glazed, heart slow burning, I opened my private drive. The encrypted one. I saved one last update of the backend failover doc, just in case they tried to strip it later, just in case they realized how badly they'd screwed up. The engine would run, for a little while, but not forever. I must have walked 3 miles that morning, just circling the neighborhood like some feral Roomba with abandonment issues. No destination, no music. Just the sound of my sneakers slapping cracked pavement and the occasional rustle of leaves hissing, told you so. My phone buzzed nonstop, names I recognized, voices I didn't want to hear. Emma from product? I had no idea, swear. Liam from ops, are you okay? Meredith from HR, of all people, left a voicemail that began, "We deeply value your contributions," and I didn't even finish it. I kept the phone in my pocket like it was radioactive. They weren't reaching out for me. Not really. They were checking their own pulse, making sure they weren't next, hoping their proximity to the explosion wouldn't leave blood on their badge. That's how it works. Someone gets called, and everyone else takes turns pretending to be surprised. I passed a rusted-out mailbox with a dead spider dangling from it and just laughed. Out loud, like a crazy woman. Because I remembered something 2 years ago. Derek, back when he still tried to pretend we were on the same side, told me during a sprint review, "Your code base is terrifying, in a good way. It's like watching a wolf carry a baby without dropping it." 6 months later, he stopped CCing me on infrastructure strategy, then stopped replying altogether. That's the corporate mating dance, by the way. First, they praise you like you walk on DevOps water, then they exile you from the kingdom when they can't control you. I became an unmonetizable threat to his fragile little spreadsheet empire. Somewhere around lap 6 of the cul-de-sac, I got a message from Tessa. Tessa and I had gone to the same underfunded state college, bonded over late-night pizza and mutual loathing of group projects. She'd stayed in the legal lane, ended up at Stratwell too, mostly handling vendor compliance. We drifted in the last year. Her work got quiet, mine got noisy, but we still had lunch now and then. I didn't expect to hear from her today. Her message was short, too short. "Did you mean for Section 9C to do that?" I stopped walking. Stared at the screen like it was a live grenade. I didn't respond right away. I didn't even breathe for a second. My brain did this weird stutter loop thing. What was Section 9C again? Oh right, that clause. The one my recruiter had called the nuclear option. The one buried so deep in my contract they needed a map and shovel to even find it. I hadn't meant for it to do anything. I just made sure it could, if it ever needed to. Exact phrasing had been subject to 3 rounds of legal hair-splitting back when I signed. It boiled down to this. If Stratwell terminated me without following the documented offboarding protocol, notice period, transition workflow, IP transfer verification, then any software licensed under my name entered what was basically a legal freeze. Uncontested, enforceable, automatic. And the real kicker? I was still, on paper, officer of record for the ops backend environment, which meant no protocol, no access to the fallback systems. And Derek, he hadn't followed a damn thing, no notice, no final meeting, no transition document signed. He treated it like an ambush, like he was getting points for dramatic flair. What he actually did was pull the pin on a live architecture. I felt it then, not rage, not sadness, something else. Something colder, like standing in a power outage and realizing the quiet isn't peace, it's warning. I texted Tessa back. They terminated access at 9:47 a.m. Audit logs should reflect it. 2 minutes later, confirmed. Ops environment fallback now restricted. Failovers already cracking. I sat down on the curb. A bird was shrieking in the distance, like even nature had something to say. I stared at the houses around me, neat little lawns, everyone pretending the world made sense inside their fences. And I realized Derek hadn't just fired me. He'd pulled the wrong wire in a live circuit and was about to find out that corporate revenge doesn't come in screaming emails or angry glass-breaking speeches. Sometimes it comes in the form of a clause, silently waiting, just doing exactly what it was built to do. At 11:08 p.m., my phone buzzed once. By 11:11, it sounded like it was dying of a seizure. Ping, 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 ping. The kind of sound you get when a server's crying for help but no one's listening, or worse, the people listening don't speak its language. I flipped it over with one finger. There they were, ops alerts. One after another. Automation failure. Vendor sync timeout escalation triggered. Reroute 02 rejected service down. Node S4 not responding unhandled exception. Invalid token access legacy, and each one hitting like a drum roll on a coffin lid. And me, I just stared. Calm, detached, like watching a train derail on mute. The notifications kept stacking. I didn't open a single one. You have to understand something. I didn't want this. Not really. Didn't build the backend to collapse. I built it to protect, to isolate risk, to scale under stress and fail gracefully if something went sideways. But I also built it with integrity. The kind no spreadsheet jockey like Derek ever bothered to learn. The problem is when you fire the integrity, the rest doesn't hold up too well. The new cost-saving team, 3 junior engineers and a contractor from someone's LinkedIn DMs, had taken over ops. Green as goose shit. One of them once asked me if a logic gate was like a permissions thing. They weren't bad people, just unqualified. Derek loved them, said they were hungry. What he meant was cheap. And now, they were frantically trying to restart the fallback environment. Probably hadn't realized access was still locked under my old email. Probably thought I'd been offboarded cleanly. After all, why would anyone check protocol when they have a superiority complex and a killer instinct? Ping. Another failure. Vendor penalty, SLA breach client ID 09422. That one hit different. That was real money. One of our top 3 clients. Each minute of downtime meant 5 figures in lost revenue. And penalties. Still, I didn't move. I turned off my overhead light and sat in the glow of the phone screen, watching the chaos pile up like snow on an abandoned highway. Then Tessa texted, "I'm forwarding you something. Keep this quiet." 10 seconds later, a zip file landed in my inbox. Password protected, of course. I entered the usual phrase, one we'd used since college. Carbonara 42, don't ask. Inside, a time-stamped PDF dump of the company's private Slack channels. Legal, ops, exec, dev. I opened it slowly. Carefully. Read like a diary of a breakdown. 11:19 p.m. Liam ops. Someone call Derek. Failovers not syncing. Where's the rollback? 11:20 p.m. Derek, CFO. Try restarting the pipeline manually. We don't need Susan for that. 11:21 p.m. Megan, dev. We do actually. Legacy fallback needs key clearance. It's still under her. 11:22 p.m. Derek. That's impossible. She's been removed. 11:23 p.m. Tessa. Legal. You didn't follow the protocol. Section 9C invoked. This is enforceable. 11:25 p.m. Derek. You have to be kidding me. 11:26 p.m. Tessa. I'm not. By 11:27 p.m., the Slack thread was full of copy-pasted contract clauses, redacted access logs, and one poor DevOps guy begging for someone to tell him who owns the goddamn certs now. Spoiler alert, I did. Legally, till a proper transition was executed, and it wasn't. I leaned back, heart slow, face blank, and felt something I hadn't felt in months. Peace, no, validation. The kind that comes not from screaming "I told you so," but from watching the sky turn red and knowing you didn't strike the match. You just weatherproofed the damn house before they tore off the roof. At 11:33 p.m., Tessa sent one final message. You holding steady? I replied, I'm drinking herbal tea and watching Jeopardy reruns. How's Derek? No answer. Didn't need one. The log said everything. The CFO was panicking. Legal was quoting me. And the system, my system, was doing exactly what it was designed to do when tampered with by fools. It was failing. Loudly. On purpose. And I didn't have to lift a damn finger. The invite hit my inbox at 6:12 a.m. sharp. Subject line, urgent. Ops continuity call legal and CFO no greeting. No context. Just a Google Meet link and a timestamp. I stared at it for a solid 10 seconds, like it might explode if I clicked it. Then I sighed, tossed my comforter off, and padded barefoot into the kitchen to boil water. Nothing screams urgent like people realizing their multi-million-dollar pipeline is crashing faster than their dignity. By 6:57 a.m., I was showered, caffeinated, and calmly seated in front of my laptop in a hoodie I'd bought back when I still thought company swag meant something. The mug beside me read, World's Okayest Engineer, which felt spiritually appropriate. I waited until 7:00 a.m. on the dot to click in. And there they were. Derek, looking like he hadn't slept, eyes glassy, tie crooked, shirt wrinkled like he'd been wrestling compliance paperwork all night and lost. Tessa, looking freshly blow-dried and emotionally armored in her usual poker face. Some junior associate from legal, eyes darting around like he wanted to disappear into his keyboard. And 2 silent black tiles, labeled COO Stratwell and Chief Legal Officer, probably dialed in from home offices where their dogs were already sensing something catastrophic. Derek forced a tight smile. Susan, thank you for joining. Appreciate you making time on such short notice. Let's be civil here. No one's pointing fingers. We just need your help walking through a few things. I smiled back, sweet, polite, deadly of course, I said, folding my hands calmly. But first, I'd like Tessa to read something aloud. Page 12. Section 9C, a beat of silence. Tessa didn't miss a step. She already had the document up. I could hear the sound of her trackpad zipping down, cleared her throat and began, with the calm authority of a woman reading someone their own obituary. Section 9C. All core operational functions licensed to employer are contingent on uninterrupted compliance with predefined exit procedures and authorizations. In the event of a violation or oversight of said procedures, the officer of record retains all suspension rights and fallback control access until protocol completion is verified. Silence. The sound of Derek exhaling so slowly it felt like he was deflating. He didn't speak, just started gently massaging his temples with his thumb and index finger, like maybe, if he pressed hard enough, he could block out what he'd just heard. Tessa looked up from the screen and added, not unkindly, "It's a standard clause for Susan's level and the nature of her architecture work." The junior legal guy blinked like he'd just learned gravity was optional. I thought that clause was purely symbolic. I raised an eyebrow. Symbolic? It's literally the only reason your fallback environment didn't hand off to an unverified node and cause a full cross-vendor breach. Derek looked like he wanted to argue but couldn't find the oxygen. So I continued, keeping my voice sugar-coated and professional. "What would you like to walk through exactly?" The COO's voice suddenly cut in, deep, curt, no patience for theater. "We bypassed the offboarding authorization workflow." Another beat. Derek didn't respond. Tessa, bless her, kept things moving. "Access logs show Susan's credentials were revoked at 9:47 a.m. yesterday. No protocol forms were filed. No confirmation from her as officer of record. No transition documentation logged. So yes." The COO let out a single word, "Jesus." Then legal piped in, old school counsel, not the twitchy junior. "Susan said carefully, would you consider temporarily reinstating access to the fallback nodes in the interest of protecting company assets and client SLAs?" I leaned back slightly. Just enough to let the silence stretch. Just enough to let them feel it. "I would," I said. "But unfortunately, without adherence to the termination protocol, doing so would violate the terms of my licensing agreement. You understand?" "Susan," Derek tried, finally speaking. I cut him off, still smiling. "You remember when you called me redundant? Turns out the pipeline disagrees." The junior legal guy mumbled something about timestamps. I pointed my cursor toward the shared document. "Check the logs. I backed up the final architecture revision at 9:44 a.m. You terminated me 3 minutes later. Anything built after that is structurally unsound." Tessa added, "and legally unusable without her sign-off." Derek's camera glitched. Or maybe he just froze. His mouth hung open slightly, as if searching for new reality to live in, one where consequences weren't a thing. I didn't flinch, didn't gloat. I just kept my voice calm. Cool, precise. Because this wasn't about revenge. It was about reminders. That just because someone doesn't shout doesn't mean they're not holding the detonator. And I had written the detonation clause. The COO's square lit up fully now, video on, tie slightly askew, jaw clenched like he'd bitten down on a lemon and didn't want anyone to see his mouth pucker. No more passive listening. No more ghosting behind muted tiles. This man was here to fix something, and you could tell by the twitch in his eyelid that he already knew what was broken. He leaned into his camera like he could physically intimidate bandwidth. "Let's make this simple. Did we bypass the authorization workflow on Susan's termination?" For a moment, it was dead silent. A single word came through the speaker like it had been soaked in molasses. Yes, no excuse, no legal tap dance. Just that one word, followed by the kind of collective silence you only hear in church right after someone screams. The junior from legal tried to step in, voice cracking like he'd swallowed a pine cone. In fairness, there may be some ambiguity regarding the procedural steps, and I didn't even look at him when I cut in. Check the timestamps. That shut him up. I saw Tessa bite the inside of her cheek to hide a smile. She knew what those words meant. Everyone on the call did. In the world of systems architecture, timestamps are gospel. You can't argue with a digital audit trail. You can't gaslight server logs. They don't bend and they never lie. I turned my camera on, full screen. No blur, no filter, just me. Hair pulled back, hoodie zipped up, and eyes that said, "You lit the match, Derek. Just lock the exits." "Let me be clear," I said. "You do not have legal access to the fallback environment." The COO blinked. "You're saying we're operating without control access?" I nodded once, correct, because I'm still the certifying officer for core systems continuity. That designation was never revoked. Not officially. Not procedurally. Which means, per Section 9C, any activation of the fallback without my sign-off is a breach of my licensing clause. Beat, then chaos. Derek began talking over someone from legal who was already talking over Tessa, who tried to cut in and got drowned out by the junior associate muttering something about constructive ambiguity and bad faith, and potentially interpretable. But the COO raised his hand like a traffic cop and barked, "Enough." They all went silent. He turned to me. Susan, if we had followed the workflow, proper protocol, 30-day transition, final confirmation, would this clause have triggered? I shrugged gently. Nope. I built in safeguards for a reason. I don't want the system to fail, but it's my system. If you strip me out without due process, it activates quarantine protocols automatically. It's not malicious, it's math. He blinked slowly. So you're telling me for the last 12 hours, we've been trying to reboot a protected environment that is legally and operationally off limits. That's what the logs say. Oh, how I loved those logs. Derek's voice jumped back in, sharp now, desperate. This is sabotage, I laughed. One sharp exhale through my nose. You really want to say that on a recorded call, Derek? After bypassing termination protocol, revoking access before a transition, and triggering Clause 9C on a live production system, the chief legal officer finally spoke. His voice was low, grave, had the weight of someone who'd just seen a litigation asteroid enter the atmosphere. Derek, he said slowly, Susan's clause is binding. She's right. We're exposed. Exposed. That was the word. The kind that drains color from execs' faces and makes boardrooms sweat through silk. I leaned in slightly, no threat in my tone, just cold, neutral power. If you'd read the clause properly, you'd know this isn't about holding the company hostage. It's about keeping chaos from spreading. I designed it so the system would break clean, rather than spiral into corrupted syncs, misfired reroutes, and false compliance reports. Another voice chimed in, Megan from Dev, which is exactly what's happening now. The COO sat back in his chair. I could hear it creak. Jesus Christ. Then he looked at me through the camera like I was a safe with the code tattooed behind my eyes. Susan, what would it take for you to recertify access? I didn't smile. Didn't gloat, just looked directly into the lens, calm and in complete control. First, you need to stop pretending I'm a rogue. You fired a systems architect with no transition plan, violated contract protocol, and triggered a clause you didn't bother to understand. I'm not your problem, I'm your failsafe. No one spoke for a beat, and in that silence something shifted. I could feel it. The power, it was mine again, not handed over, taken back. Line by line, clause by clause, timestamp by timestamp. No tantrums, no screaming, just precision, just the truth, just the quiet, surgical realization across that call that I wasn't the one who broke the system. They were. By 9:04 a.m., Derek had disappeared from the Slack threads. No more frantic pings, no half-baked commands, just vanished. Like someone finally yanked the cord on a malfunctioning blender before it sprayed any more legal puree across the ops department. Rumor had it, he'd pulled everyone into a restricted access call. No recordings, no notes, no paper trail. Just a good all-fashioned damage control seance. The kind where executives whisper into each other's Bluetooth headsets while pacing in soundproof glass rooms, hoping the smell of panic doesn't seep into the carpet. Meanwhile, IT started poking around. Quietly, of course. Like digital raccoons rifling through a server farm. What they found wasn't a buffet, it was a vault. My environment wasn't some open-concept playground. It was a series of compartmentalized modules, encrypted and access-keyed to specific identity tokens, namely mine. And since Derek had so graciously nuked my credentials without a transition, those tokens now pointed to a dead account. Oops. That's the thing about architecture. When you build it with integrity, it doesn't crumble. It rejects corruption. Every fallback node, every secondary relay, every reroute script, they all had checks. And every check pointed back to my verified key, which meant no key, no access. And guess what? No access equals no continuity equals a lot of angry phone calls. The first vendor rang the alarm at 9:47 a.m. One of our freight aggregation partners, mid-tier account, but sensitive as hell. Their systems were expecting a relay ping every 5 minutes. Hadn't seen one in 40. Then came the email from a multinational client in Asia, unable to validate inventory sync. Please confirm if breach has occurred. 10 minutes later, another email. This one with the word penalty in bold. By noon, the compliance team was running drills like it was DEFCON 2. Every SLA breach had a dollar amount, and those amounts weren't small. Penalty clauses had been built into every enterprise contract, as high as $10K per hour of service interruption. Multiply that by 6 vendors and 3 international clients, and Stratwell was now bleeding money faster than Derek could whisper contingency. Someone finally had the bright idea to check the legal chain of Susan-related access, and there it was, clear as a car crash in slow motion. Termination date, yesterday. Transition protocol initiated, not recorded. Certifying officer revoked, not applicable. Environment key transfer, not executed. And at the bottom in bold from my original contract. In absence of a verified 30-day transition period, the licensee retains final operational veto over fallback environments and continuity pipelines. Boom. Legal couldn't unwind it. PR couldn't spin it. Finance couldn't afford it. Meanwhile, what was I doing? Getting a manicure. Yep, that's where I went. Walked into a little strip mall salon between a vape store and a tax prep place. Asked for deluxe gel set and chose a shade called Exit Clause Red. While a woman named Mira buffed my nails and made small talk about her dog's Halloween costume, I scrolled silently through the growing digital funeral pyre Stratwell was hosting in my inbox. Tessa kept sending updates. Not frantic, just factual. Client 09422 threatening breach action. CLO just asked Derek why we didn't backdate the protocol logs. I almost choked. Someone in IT tried to bypass the encrypted shell. Flagged for breach attempt. Sigh. I sipped cucumber water, watched Mira paint the fourth coat of silent vengeance on my fingers, and realized something: they hadn't just underestimated me. They'd never bothered to see me. To them, I was back-end noise. A tool. A convenient black box that spit out uptime, till the box refused to open. Back at HQ, Derek was reportedly exploring alternatives, which is executive speak for panicking in increasingly smaller circles. Word on the Slack was that he'd tried to call the vendor directly to demand a reset key, only to be told their terms didn't permit manual overrides without the certifying officer's dual-auth handshake. He had built a kingdom on shortcuts, and now the roads were collapsing. At 1:37 p.m., Stratwell's head of client success posted a message that made it into one of the forwarded threads. We need to ask Susan what she wants. Before this gets worse. Too late, it was already worse. They just hadn't hit bottom yet. And me? I was already halfway home, hands still drying under a cheap UV lamp, grinning like someone who wrote the ending of the story before anyone else knew they were in one. The offer came via encrypted email at 4:12 p.m. No subject line, no salutation. Just a PDF with the file name proposal confidential KMPDF. Tessa texted a minute later, read it, then call me. I opened the file while sitting on my porch with a glass of Pinot and a blanket over my legs, like some villain in early retirement. Wind chimes played something lazy and out of tune in the background. Fitting. The PDF was exactly what I expected, and exactly what they thought would buy my silence. Full severance per original contract. 3 months discretionary pay in recognition of contributions. Letter of recommendation from SVP of Engineering. Mutual NDA effective immediately upon signature. Access keys to be restored upon sign-off of exit documents. They called it a good faith exit agreement. I called it what it was: hush money with lipstick. I waited until sunset. Let them sweat. Then I called Tessa. You see it, she asked, skipping the pleasantries. Oh, I saw it. And I took a sip of wine. I want my job back. Silence. Susan, she said cautiously, are you sure? I mean, after everything, same role, I said, same scope. But I pick my new supervisor. Tessa didn't laugh. She just exhaled like she'd expected this and was bracing for the second half. And I want a written apology, I added, from Derek, personally. Not boilerplate, not we regret the confusion. I want it in ink. How she laughed. You want to make him say it? No, I said, smiling into the glass, I want to make him sign it. She paused again, then said, I'll take it to the board. But you should know they're scared. This is different now. How so? Her voice dropped. Legal's calling this surgical. Your clause triggered perfectly. Your logs are airtight. The clients are furious, but they're not blaming you. They're blaming us. Derek's handling of this is being called reckless procedural negligence. I swirled the last inch of wine in the glass. Tell the board, I said, if they want the bleeding to stop, they don't need my silence. What do they need? They need my return. An hour later, a different message came in, this one from the board liaison herself. Not a legal flunky, not a PR ghostwriter, her. Subject line, proposal reintegration terms short and surgical. Just like I liked it. They were willing to reinstate me. Well, operational authority reinstated. New reporting line under the COO, not Derek. Public-facing explanation, reinstated under strategic review. And the apology, attached as a scan document, signed in blue ink. To Miss Susan Mayers, I acknowledge the failure in adhering to due process regarding your separation from Stratwell Systems. Your role and contribution were instrumental to our success. and I deeply regret the mishandling of your transition. Eric Wensley, CFO Tessa, sent one final message after that. He threw a chair in the green room after signing it. Just FYI, I didn't respond. I didn't need to, because by that point I wasn't angry anymore. Anger is messy, it consumes you, makes you reactive. But strategy is clean. It's math with intent. They thought they'd cut me out like dead weight, but I was the engine. And now they needed me not just to stop the bleeding, to remind everyone how the arteries were laid out in the first place. Let them offer hush money to someone else. I wasn't the whisper in a corner type. I'd taken their system apart without raising my voice. And now I was walking back in with the scalpel. The meeting invite came with the kind of gravity usually reserved for funerals and SEC investigations. Subject: Emergency Governance Session, Board plus External Counsel date. ASAP. Attendance mandatory. It was one of those calendar blocks that didn't ask, it commanded. Even the usual exec flex of joining late or delegate instead had been stripped from the options. Everyone needed to be there, especially me. So I picked the most inconvenient, unbothered setting possible, a public park. No ring light, no bookshelf in the background with curated leadership books. Just me, a bench, a half-sweaty iced tea from a gas station, the hum of cicadas scoring the slow, inevitable implosion of Derek Wensley. I joined the call 3 minutes early, just to make sure they saw me calm, casual, positioned under a tree like I was about to discuss gardening, not corporate decapitation. The Zoom grid lit up one by one. The board chair, 2 outside legal reps from some firm with a name like a law firm and a brand of bourbon, McAllister and Crow. Stratwell's chief risk officer. Koo. And eventually Derek. He looked like sour milk in a suit. Hair uncombed, shirt rumpled, tie clinging to his neck like it was trying to escape. No smug grin, no passive-aggressive posturing. Just pale, clammy silence. The board chair began with the tone of someone who's been reading too many zeros on the wrong end of an Excel sheet. Miss Mayers, thank you for joining on short notice. I nodded once. Of course. He didn't bother with small talk. You confirmed that you were terminated without adherence to standard protocol. I pulled my phone out, tapped the screen, and held it up. Yes, and here's the audit log of the trigger event. Credential revocation at 9:47 a.m., 1 minute before final backup procedures were scheduled. No transition plan filed. No formal sign-off. I watched them read it. Watched the CFO's thumbnail-sized square shift uncomfortably in his box. I continued. 10 minutes after that trigger, the primary vendor pipeline began cascading failure. Loss escalated to breach of SLA with 3 separate international clients by hour 2. No one interrupted me. They knew better now. The chair turned his head slightly, just enough to look at Derek without saying his name. Do you know how many clawback clauses that activates? Derek didn't even look up. He just nodded, slowly, like a child who finally understands he did. In fact, break the TV with the Wii controller. One of the external counsels leaned in, square-jawed, polished, the kind of guy who probably says value proposition in bed. Miss Mayers, would you be willing to confirm that your access was revoked unilaterally prior to protocol completion? Yes, I said, and I've already sent over the IP logs and timeline to your office. The counsel nodded. No further questions. The risk officer spoke up next, tapping the side of her stylized tortoiseshell glasses like she was hoping they'd give her better news. We're modeling losses in the low 7 figures, depending on how fast the fallback gets reauthorized. But if we factor in client attrition, it could double. The board chair didn't flinch. We won't lose those clients, not if we show them who really runs the ops engine. Then, finally, for the first time, he looked directly at Derek. I've reviewed the employment contract myself, ignored Section 9C. You bypassed all required exit protocol. You unilaterally revoked access from the officer of record on a live environment. Derek blinked like the air around him had gotten thicker. Do you have anything to say? Derek opened his mouth and then closed it. Nothing came out, not a denial, not a defense. Just a slow, pathetic shrug, like he was too exhausted to even pretend anymore. I stirred the ice in my drink with the straw, watching him like I was observing some slow-motion wildlife documentary. The predator, now wounded, dethroned, no roar left. The COO's voice cut in, flat, sharp. He's compromised the board's credibility. The chair nodded. He'll be placed on administrative leave until final review. No protest, no dramatic scene. Derek just sat there, gray and blinking. Reduced to background noise in a meeting he once thought he ran. The chair turned back to me. Miss Mayers, the board would like to formally reinstate you in your prior role, effective immediately. Additionally, we are granting you veto authority over core system changes and naming you Executive Vice President of Core Systems Integrity. I didn't answer right away. Let them sit in it. Let them feel the vacuum that forms when you fire the backbone and expect the body to stand. Then I smiled. Not a grin, not a smirk, just calm acceptance of something that should have never been undone in the first place. I leaned forward slightly and said, I'll consider it, but not under him. The chair didn't blink. Understood. Derek's camera went dark. The meeting was almost over. Everyone could feel it, the stillness that creeps in when the blood's already dried and the guilty have run out of lies. What remained was just formality. Paperwork. The final snap of a latch on a coffin someone else built for themselves. General Counsel, an older woman named Diane with courtroom eyes and a voice like she used to teach nuns how to cross-examine, leaned toward her mic. No theatrics, no preamble. Just one line, read with the quiet precision of a scalpel slicing open denial. Per Miss Mayer's contract, Section 9C, Line 7, termination without protocol invokes unilateral suspension, rights by the officer of record. She paused, then looked directly at Derek. No one else did. They didn't need to. Every square on the call had the same unspoken expression. That's it. It's over. Derek cleared his throat, half-heartedly lifting a hand like maybe he had one last card up his sleeve. I think we're taking that clause out of context, and if I can just, the board chair didn't even look up. He simply raised a single hand, palm out, and said, We're done here. That was it. 5 words. And in those 5 words, years of ego, arrogance, spreadsheet logic crumbled like wet drywall. There was a quiet rustling as someone from HR muted Derek's square. Then another as a legal liaison disconnected him entirely. Just like that, gone, a ghost in the logs. The chair turned to me again, his voice more measured now. Ernest, Miss Mayers, the board has unanimously approved the following: full reinstatement, effective immediately. Operational veto power over all core architecture. A formal elevation to Executive Vice President, Core Systems Integrity. I waited, not because I needed more, but because silence, when used correctly, is power. I let the statement hang in the air long enough for every person on that call to remember why they were offering it. Not out of goodwill, not out of generosity, but because they had no other option. Finally, I leaned forward just slightly, still seated on the same park bench, still sipping my now half-melted iced tea. Still calm. I'll consider it, I said, but not under him, and the beauty of it, no one pushed back. Not a single voice defended him. Not a single, but we'll talk about that later. Just a quiet understanding. They knew. The house had been on fire for 24 hours, and Derek had been the one flicking matches like it was his birthday. They nodded, one by one. No pomp, no applause, just the quiet machinery of consequence, finally doing what it was built to do. When the call ended, I didn't jump up or fist pump or cry. I just sat there under the same tree, listening to the wind in the leaves and the faint rustle of a squirrel digging for something it may or may not have buried months ago. I pulled my phone out one more time and reread the line in my contract, the one no one had paid attention to. The one they'd glossed over during onboarding, one Derek had laughed at when he first found it and called overly cautious language. Termination without protocol invokes unilateral suspension, rights by the officer of record. They thought it was legal fluff. I knew it was a fuse. They thought I was an asset until they tried to delete me like a calendar invite. But I wasn't an asset. I was infrastructure. And infrastructure, when properly architected, doesn't scream, doesn't throw tantrums. It simply waits for misuse and then holds the receipts. I stood up, tossed the empty iced tea into the trash, and started walking. Not because I was running from anything, but because, for the first time in years, I knew exactly where I was going and why no one could ever move me without checking the clause first. And as I walked, I smiled, not because I'd won, but because I never forgot what they thought they could erase. Thanks for joining the fun, you office survivors. Subscribe for more switch-flicking drama. Let's make your former coworkers sweat.